And we've got two bloody brilliant people to talk about, this really exciting new discovery in WA in a commodity that no one knows anything about in a part of the world that's bloody hard to get to.
WA1, the Niobium play, right on the edge of the WA border.
The 2023 drilling program has recorded the highest grade niobium intersection to date.
Oh, mate, the grades are eye-watering. Quite frankly, they just blew me out of the water.
There's no doubt in my mind that this clearly has multi-$100 million tonne potential, which is a big call.
So seeing this at this sort of depth in Western Australia, and the 200 metre spacing that they've drilled it on originally, that's one of those things that I'm like, well, they're really going for a monster here. And I really couldn't look past it as one of those tier zero, if you like, deposits, one of those one-of-a-kind special types of events that only really happens maybe once per 5 years or 10 years globally.
Right, g'day, money miners. 7th of June, a Wednesday. Welcome, Trav Ricciardo, to your own podcast.
Hey, mate.
Mate, we're getting into today. We have got some Twitter folk coming on to give a bit of a WA1 spectacular, because Trav and I decided, or mostly me, decided that niobium is out of my knowledge, way out of my knowledge. Can talk underground blasting and stope optimization, but cannot talk niobium.
Totally. And
you can talk dollars.
Yeah, and I got to admit, I get a bit nervous, Maddie, talking about companies at a very early stage. I just think it's often a bit fraught with danger. You might, be talking about potential of things being something that they're not. So I've always just been a bit apprehensive to venture into this territory. But, I think the way that we're going to explore it, because of what it looks like, is there's this pretty significant discovery in Western Australia. It looks pretty economic. There's holes in it now that show that, it could be pretty meaningful on a substantial scale. So we need to talk about it, but we don't have numbers to really talk to yet. All we have is bloody drill results, which means we aren't the people to talk about it. But
we've got two. So we've got coming up later in the show, Emanuel Datt from Datt Capital, and the Twitter pseudonym Bogan Geologist shall remain anonymous.
I love
His
it.
name Bogan Geologist. They're the gurus of niobium, both shareholders, but all over what's going on there. So great chat. So that'll be later in the show. Now, Trav, we're ripping a bit of a change in the format, a bit of feedback. So we thought we're gonna bring the recap straight to the front before we get into the big stories each episode now.
I like it, mate.
And just so to give everyone a bit of a snapshot of what's going on, and then we're going to get into what's really going on in the going on. So, mate, what's happening in the news today, Trav? We've got Perseus in there, Perseus Mining. So they've provided an operational update for their 70% owned Meyas, oh, bloody, how do I pronounce that, Trav?
I don't know. They renamed it. It used to be called something else. So
Meyas
you've got
Sand Gold Project in northern Sudan. So
they're always quick to point out that it's only 75 kilometres from the border of Egypt, this one, mate.
Yes, true, but it's in Sudan. And so they withdrew their employees from site in April, and they've been monitoring the armed conflicts in Sudan. And Perseus have reported there have been no incidents in the area of 250 square kilometres around the site. So they're allowing contractors and employees to return to site to get site works and drilling back up and going this month. But I guess their scheduled decision for their final investment for this project has been deferred for the foreseeable future.
Wow.
So that
Deferred FID, yeah.
Deferred FID for the foreseeable future doesn't really bring much confidence for.
No. I wonder what that means. Like for this company, they buy undeveloped projects, they develop them, and that's how they create value. Strategy that's worked really well for them. I wonder what that means in the context of their M&A strategy here. Are they going to look to be pretty active from an acquisition perspective, because undeveloped ounces in Africa are pretty cheap right now, and I wonder which companies they're eyeing off, because it looks like this one's on hold.
Very on hold. It's pretty strong wording saying their foreseeable future. Now, Ramelius, we chatted about them yesterday, so they provided an update for the Penny Gold Mine. So second stope completed, grades estimated to be between 15 to 20 grams per tonne gold. So absolutely stonking grades there. And so what was holding them up before that was ore haulage permits. So that's all been approved. They received those approvals on the 11th of May, so they'll be transitioning from double to quad road trains, so they'll be able to pump the dirt on the highway a bit quicker. So then they've released some other drill results from their Penny North, so 6 metres at 44 grams, 1.7 at 106 grams, 2 metres at 131. So some pretty good results there. So those aren't true width. So that 6 metres is only an estimated true width of 2 metres. So
yeah, that Penny's being trucked all the way to Checkers, which we talked about a fair bit yesterday.
We did. Now, Poseidon, POS, they've reported an updated mineral resource for their Black Swan project. So a lot of inferred material went into indicated in the resource. So the resource is reported at 26 million tonne at 0.72% nickel now for 189,000 tonnes of nickel. So that compares to a previous grade of 0.63. So the resource is lifted by about 8,000 tonnes of contained nickel. So measured and indicated resources have increased 48%, and they've got a bit more confidence in the grade and characterisation of the serpentinite and talc carbonate domaining.
You are an expert in this talc carbonate.
Well, I pronounced serpentinite correctly, and I would also like to pronounce comatite correctly.
Comatite?
Like I said, comatite.
Wow.
Comatite.
Oh, yeah.
Mate, I'm all over bloody nickel now.
I look forward to it.
YouTube haters are going to have nothing to say soon.
It's a strategy for engagement.
Because that's serpentinite and talc carbonate domaining is the key thing to processing on there. I think it was their 1.1 million tonne per annum case. That doesn't include processing of the talc carbonate. So that is very important, that domaining, for the future of this project on their base case, first case processing scenario. So Gascoyne, GCY, they've also released some assays for drilling outside of the current Never Never deposit. Is
it a new discovery if it's outside?
Yeah, so there was that hanging wall lode that they released. So the top results here, 10 metres at 12.2 grams, 17 metres at 12, 13 metres at 11.4. So they're currently drilling a 550 metre down plunge hole to test depth extension, along with drilling near vicinity targets. So they're hopefully in aim of really increasing this resource for the Never Never deposit. So that's what's happening today, Trav. Now, Trav, let's get into WA1, the Niobium play, right on the edge of the WA border, Runter?
West Arunta.
Not sure. Yeah, right near the Northern Territory border, so middle of bloody nowhere. But, mate, it is absolutely going gangbusters. We'll go over a timeline. So pretty much it's gone from 14 cents to $5 in a few months, 6 months or so. So it's a great play. So, right. Let's cut to the chat we have with Mr. Emanuel Datt. I call him Datty.
I think
if you say it quick, it's Daddy.
It sounded like Daddy to me.
And the main man, Bogan Geologist. Righto, let's head over. Trav, a bit of bloody retail mania, and we're about to get right in it. And instead of, me making a dickhead of myself trying to talk about it.
Oh, mate, we're out of our depth today.
We are out of our depth.
We had to phone a friend.
But speaking about in the middle of bloody hell nowhere, there is some niobium at depth for WA1. Now we've got a couple of Twitter handles that have decided to join us today.
Mate, how good is Twitter? There's some real expertise out there. You just got to ask around, and they're willing to help. And Niobium. So there's a bunch of reasons that I didn't want to talk about this company. One is it's way too early stage for me to have any value in the conversation. It's like
this is red flag central for you, Trav.
Not red flag. Like it's something bloody economic here, and that's why we're talking about it, right? But I don't mate. Unless there's cash flow, I can add nothing to that conversation. And you need to think about a mine. So none of us have any bloody geological understanding of anything other
Little,
than it just looks like
especially
crayons on a
niobium.
page.
Yes.
And I know how to ask for cross sections for MDs, and that's about it. But thankfully, there are people out there who've done degrees in this stuff, and they can talk about it. And we've got two bloody brilliant people to talk about, this really exciting new discovery in WA in a commodity that no one knows anything about in a part of the world that's bloody hard to get to.
Except these two blokes.
Except these two blokes. One,
Let's introduce them.
let's do it.
The lads.
So we got the first person I reached out to on Twitter is this pseudonymous Twitter handle by the name of Bogan Geologist. G'day, Bogan.
Hey, mate, what's a good word?
Mate, good to have another Bogan on here.
Just thinking of beer on a lovely old Wednesday, arvo.
Oh, I like it. Now, our other guest, Trav, who is not anonymous.
No, he's not. He runs a fund, and I messaged Bogan and asked if he'd be willing to lend some expertise explaining stuff that we don't know about, and he said you should get in touch with Emanuel Datt of Datt Capital. runs a fund over in Melbourne there. And across the full spectrum. So, yeah, Emanuel, appreciate you joining us and bloody talking about things that we don't know about.
Yeah, no worries, Trav and Matt. And also thanks to you guys for bringing such engaging and candid dialogue to the mining sector. I think it's one of Australia's great industries, and I think you guys are doing a fantastic job of encouraging discussion around these various topics. So
we're
thanks
grabbing
to you guys.
We're grabbing mining media by the balls, Emmanuel, and we're
definitely
taking it to a new level, Cobber. Now, right, before we get into WA1, lads, because you guys are going to both provide some expert insight into this, but first for the punters out there, or the possible punters to be, I want to give a bit of a timeline of this little mania that's just recently happening, WA1. Strap yourselves in. Now, Emmanuel and Bogan, feel free to sub in if I do miss anything in between the dates. But let's rewind back to October 26th last year, 2022. WA1 sitting at 14 cents. 14 cents. Now, they went into a trade note, released some assays, 54 metres at 0.62% niobium. So NB2O, so niobium oxide.
Yep.
Yeah. Right. So absolutely went gangbusters. They settled it at around $2 in November, so up from 14 cents to $2. They did trade as high as $2.93, so that's about a bloody 15 bagger in no time. Now, they then raised 10 million bucks. Why not raise a bit of coin when you have a little prolific rise like that? 18th of November 2022, they raised 10 million bucks at $2 a share. Raised at a 13% premium, which
you love to see it.
Unless you're Bill Beam at Develop, not many people get to raise at a premium like they did. So that was 13% premium to the last traded price. So they seemed like they put a bit into geophysics and like scoping it out, and commenced drilling in 22nd of March 2023. They were trading at $1.24 then, so they regressed a bit from their $2 raise price. 28th of April, they entered a trading halt. They were at $1.80. And then 1st of May, they come out with 31 metres at 3.5% niobium, 24 metres at 2.1%, 21 metres at 2.2%, and jump back up to $2.33. And then 11th of May, Regal took all of the $10 million placement at $2.75. And I think Travis said 2% discount
to the 5-day.
Pretty bloody tight.
And upset some brokers doing that, but well done by Regal, well played.
Yeah, so $2.75, 5th of June, they come out with then mineralogy and assay results and went up to $6.71, but today they're sitting at $5.30. So, mate,
there's a few important dates on that timeline you've forgotten. And that's probably the dates that Emanuel and Bogan probably bought shares. So full disclosure to anyone listening that I'm pretty sure our guests on today are long the stock. They're lending their expertise from the angle that they've done the research on it, but assume there's some bias to their views here. And
JD, the punter,
on the money of mine side, JD not here with us today, but we know he owns some shares too.
And look, if anyone wants to do an off-market transfer to me at 50 cents, I'm happy to take it. So, right, Emanuel and Bogan. I guess since you are shareholders, when did you guys get in on this?
So I first got in, I think it was the $2 raise. That was really heavily sought after. So got cut back heavily. And then since then, I've sort of bought above that price when that last lot of assays, not the last lot, but that lot of assays came out. And we've been on the buy side. Now we're sort of one of the larger shareholders after, the management team and Regal. And I think it's just an incredible opportunity. And, we'll talk a bit more about it, I guess. How about you, Bogan? Are you holding shares in WA1 at the moment?
Yeah, loaded to the gills, mate. I've got a couple of mates and family on it. And I first basically got on about 3 minutes after they came out of Holt while I was driving through the eastern part of WA. Had a mate basically, send me a screenshot of the assays and sort of couldn't look past it. And then, just blasted the cell wall. It's definitely one of those ones that once you look at it, you got to sort of, think twice. And and from there, it was just like driving across Australia and just watching it go up each day. It's been one of those magical journeys, really.
Beautiful, mate. We'll save the theology for later. But I'm glad there's a bloody a story to it. I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, what the bloody hell is niobium? Like, I'd never heard of this until like a month ago when WA1 was just plastered across my Twitter feed. And now I feel like everyone knows about it, but I still don't have a bloody clue what it's for. So,
wasn't it a character on The Matrix? Wasn't that? Or Niobe? Yeah, Niobe.
Yeah. Emanuel, can you help me out here?
Yeah, sure. So I guess niobium, it's always been considered a bit of a niche mineral. Why that is because, historically supply has been really scarce. Typically it's, or the major use of niobium is as a microalloy in steel production, or specialty steels, I should say. So about 90% of niobium is consumed in that particular industry, with the remainder in various industrial uses like medical and those sort of things. I think the big advantage of incorporating niobium into these steel alloys is that it reduces the weight materially, whilst increasing the strength and corrosion and heat resistance of these particular steels.
Is demand for it steady? Like, you see sort of pretty steady demand year on year, or like what's that market dynamic look like?
Yeah, I think demand has been rising slowly. I think over time, it's the compound annual growth rate in terms of consumption has been around 2 or 3%.
Yeah.
I think that is really due to the fact that this is a really scarce commodity. From the supply side, it's very concentrated. But just to sort of close out what the advantages of using niobium are. So incorporating 300 grams of niobium in a ton of steel can reduce the weight of the steel by 25% versus using conventional. So,
wow.
That's ripped off an Alkane presentation from back in 2017.
Wow.
I might start eating some niobium. That might be bloody handy. I could drop some weight.
Yeah. They were pushing that as part of their Dubbo project at the time. So they were quite hot on it back then. But this is a very different kettle of fish. And I guess ultimately, a big part of the thesis is that by reducing weight, you reduce costs. So I think there's really strong growth potential in construction, infrastructure.
Gotcha. Would you say that the demand side, if it reduces costs, would the demand side of the equation probably just be limited by the fact that it has a high price at the moment, and I guess if new supply came online and it was a bit lower price, you'd also see sort of demand form around that?
Yeah, it's really about diversity of supply. So the single largest producer in the whole market is a private Brazilian company called CBMM. So, if you're a big steel mill or in Japan or Korea or China, do you really want to invest in technology and adopting the use of this particular mineral when there's so much concentration risk? If something goes wrong with the mine face, then you're stuffed, right? So that's why diversity in supply is actually quite important when it comes to adopting these sort of very niche minerals. A good example I can probably give you is Linus.
Yep.
So it's a pretty similar market structure in the sense that production has always been quite heavily China-centric. So Linus was pretty much the first producer in a Western nation, and could guarantee that there would be stable, decade-long supply. So that's why the whole bringing about of Mount Weld into production was financed by the Japanese, essentially. And that obviously led to confidence from downstream adopters of the technology who could have been rare earth users, and they saw this, and that has led over time to a huge increase in the market size, and consumption of rare earths. So I really think that the potential is here for a similar sort of path to be taken.
The difference being, though, the rare earth production in that instance was coming out of China, and the geopolitical relations with China are a bit different versus Brazil. You're saying 90% comes out of Brazil here. Brazil is probably in a less sort of globally hostile geopolitical situation right now. So the difference out of risk, but the point on having kind of a diversity of supply has sort of never been more important than it is right now.
One element I should probably mention on that is that both the main Brazilian mines are in either or partially owned by the Chinese. So the Chinese definitely have their foot on on the major sources of global supply, even if it is located in Brazil.
So Bogan, mate, since you got the whole family and probably all the local Uber drivers in WA1 now, mate. What do you think? I guess first pass looking at these grades and everything. I guess getting a new niobium player in the market, easy, hard? Is it going to be? What do you reckon?
Oh, mate, the grades are eye-watering. Quite frankly, they just pretty much blew me out of the water. And the way I came across niobium was actually reading the book on tech that was written by the founder of tech, Norman Keeble. And he was talking about the Niobium mine in Canada, the only other supplier of niobium really on the global scale. And I went through the Niobium mine, and I think they're producing like a 0.6% grade out of an underground mine. So seeing this at this sort of depth in Western Australia, and the 200-metre spacing that they've drilled it on originally, that's one of those things that I'm like, well, they're really going for a monster here. And I really couldn't look past it as one of those tier zero, if you like, deposits, one of those one-of-a-kind special types of events that only really happens maybe once per 5 years or 10 years globally in terms of like a discovery. So, really at the end of the day, it was kind of a no-brainer for me. And, every part that I've seen of it so far, even the last announcement, it's just looking like it's getting better and better with time, and they're going to find more honeypots around the area. And these grades, like when you're getting over 1% at a depth of less than 100 metres or even less than 200 metres, it starts looking like a very, very interesting type of deposit. And you compare, say, I like to use metal equivalents like a bit of a criminal, but say you compare the price of niobium to the price of, say, copper, and you're looking at something that's like, what, again, 45 to 9 grand. It's like almost 5 times as much as the prevailing copper price. So you can imagine finding a deposit of copper that's grading at 5% over 200-metre spacing on first pass. It's stupid. It's stupid at this point, but there's going to be a couple of boxes to be ticked eventually by the company. But honestly, as they continue to step this out, it's just look better and better, and it becomes one of those stories that I I quite frankly couldn't not get other people involved in.
So if you look at what's there at the moment, you'll be able to give it a good overview. You're talking about the spacing and everything. So there's 12 drill holes being put into it. So pretty unreal. You can have it's got a 250 mil market cap at the moment, like valuation on 12 drill holes. But I guess talking
about 300 million fully diluted, Matty. So yeah. Like how the hell do you get a $300 million market cap with 12 holes? I just obviously I'm bloody a finance guy, but it's amazing value creation with a few hits. And how do you back solve value? That's the bit that I'd love to know.
At this stage, I think value is kind of a bit of a questionable topic. This could either be a $200, $300 million market cap company or a $1 billion market cap company based on what they've got and what they'll continue to put out there. I like to think of the recent discovery in Argentina by a company called No Guts, No Glory Exploration, a Canadian listed company. They drilled one hole and put on about 500 million in market cap within the space of a week. So you think, God, yeah. Basically, it's one of those situations that because this commodity is so scarce, it's not as much about the ridiculous grades going forward as it'll be about actually working out if it's metallurgically viable, who the end owner is going to be, and who's the seller on the sell side, really. And when we've got groups like Tally, I believe the company's called, the major shareholder, management owning quite a bit of it, and then other groups like Datt Capital and stuff hoovering up everything that's left the site. You're in this scenario where the valuation could easily go wherever it wants to on the basis of good results. So how do you value it at the end of the day? Well, how do you value anything that is run by a single company, basically globally? It's really, you just got to do some back of the envelope calculations, use their ferroniobium price they put in the announcements, and just remember it's a 65% ferroniobium concentrate that is the $45,000 a tonne valuation everyone puts on niobium. So I like to think of it as valuing the LME zinc price off what a zinc concentrate would sell for to a smelter. You're really getting to a stage where it's there's questions to be answered, but it's it's in that sort of priceless area. It's like having as Emanuel put it, like a mountain world sort of scenario where you've got a deposit there that's just far beyond everything else in the market. It's what would you put? Yep.
I might jump in here, Bogan, if you don't mind. So I guess there are really sort of three elements here, I think. So I think number one is scarcity. So these sort of deposits are very, very rare. So there are less than 5 projects globally, including in production, where niobium could be considered the primary product. So ultra rare. Also, the grade is an absolute standout. So Araxa, which is the Brazilian mine, the giant Brazilian mine, I should say, that produced as about 70% of global production, is the only niobium deposit which has a resource grade over 2%. And when you compare that with WA1's results, this really, from a grade perspective, I think these are world-class grades that they're sort of finding and discovering through drilling. And the third and final point is the metallurgy, as Bogan pointed out. Just because you have niobium in core doesn't necessarily mean it translates into a payable, saleable product ultimately. And even though the MET at this stage is pretty preliminary, in the last announcement they did disclose, I think, quite positive indications that this definitely looks like the real deal in terms of potentially, becoming a producer at some stage.
So I'll just hop back in there, sorry. And
right.
as
we're fighting
Manuel's,
against each other, 4 of us.
Oh, sorry, boys. Sorry. But as Emanuel was saying, that their early cider mineralogical work has shown that it's basically all hosted within pyrochlore or columbite. And that's you've got a case there where they're likely going to be able to concentrate these minerals out quite readily into a ferroniobium product. So if they can answer that question, this goes to that top tier status along with CBMM's deposit.
Well, that answers the question I was about to ask you, mate, because I was going to ask what stood out in the mineralogy to lead you to think this, whether it's going to be processable or not. Mate, you're all over it.
So, now, Emanuel, I'm just keen to get it. Like, you must have done some back of the envelope sort of calcs on it. I saw Paradigm come out with their bit of a note today, sort of saying that they think, based on the 12 holes to date, there's probably 20 million tonnes with a grade of about 2% already. Does that, does those sort of numbers match up your internal thinking? You would have run the ruler over it?
I think that, as we saw early on in the campaign where the company were drilling deeper holes, there's no doubt in my mind that this clearly has multi-$100 million tonne potential, which is a big call, but that's at depth. But what we're really interested in is the high-grade weathered zone that's much shallower. I think that's obviously the low-hanging fruit that the company are focusing on. And I think our own back of envelope, we'd be really happy if the company can achieve, say, 30 to 40 million tonnes at, say, a 2% niobium grade for mineralization that's, say, less than 100 meters in depth. I think the bulk of their mineralization, they've been hitting sort of between that sort of 30 to 70 or 80 meter range. So I think that's reasonably achievable. But then again, it all depends on results going forward from here. But I think the results are really, really encouraging. And it's going to be really interesting to see.
So again, if you go into the actual geology of it, what do these niobium deposits look like if you're going to look at the actual ore body shape side of things? What's this sort of shaping up? Is it like a big flat-lying deposit? Is it going to be dribs and drabs everywhere? What do they usually look like?
Well, I'll step in here and just say that basically this is completely based on the weathering and oxidation profile as we know it. And for now, we're basically going to be expecting a flattish blanket extending pretty much over the carbonatite and maybe over the fringes of it. But there is likelihood that they will drill these deeper holes into the intrusive itself and hopefully find higher pocket grades, higher pockets of the fresh material in there to give it that extra sort of length to go. But the big thing is that you know what basic intrusive looks like. It's one of those big blobby things that sort of sits there under the ground. And what we're really focused on here is not that intrusive itself. We're focused more on these horizontal to sub-horizontal oxidation profiles that are hosting most of this high-grade material. And for instance, there's a hole that was released, not a very important hole to most people, but hole 34 that was released in this last announcement. And if you notice, the oxidation profile actually comes all the way up to surface. So there's a good chance that this deposit might actually extend past certain holes that might seem like they would close off the deposit initially. So what we're thinking, what I'm thinking mainly is that this is really going to be a case of finding where this oxidation profile is in a Goldilocks zone, not too deep, not too shallow, but that just right area where you can get the widths that'll support a decent bulk mining operation.
How does that work, Bogan? I'm not a bloody geo, but I think from my memory, hole 34 sort of come up dance from a niobium oxide perspective. Is that right? And then, but you're saying that it could actually the deposit could extend further out that way. How does that work?
Basically, the regolith, so the transitional zone material, and the fresh material comes too close to surface there. So it's a case of it being too shallow to actually host that oxidation profile. You can imagine like a primary gold deposit, for instance, coming all the way to surface, not having an oxide blanket over it. What we're primarily looking at here is having that oxide blanket extend and be in that, as I just said before, that Goldilocks zone. If you don't have that base of complete oxidization there, then you will likely not get that niobium. It's likely been present before, maybe 100,000, a million years ago, and then has since eroded and disappeared, floated on down a local creek.
So with the fresh transitional and oxide material for niobium, I know it's different with every mineral, but he's up on the processing side of things with the different stages of rock, which is better, which is worse in the case of niobium.
Essentially, yeah, we're just all speculating at this point, but if we do have that good oxidation profile extending out, then that will be the cherry on the sundae, so to speak. It's what's down in the fresh won't necessarily matter as much. It'll likely host a lower grade than what we're getting up in this supergene profile, if you'd like to use that terminology. But as far as I see it, it's not as important anymore. It's we're really just Emanuel and I are probably just sitting back and waiting to see how far this blanket goes, because it's free digging material as well. It won't require much blasting. It's the type of thing you can literally just get a 70-ton, 120-ton excavator in, just start going at it.
And what is the what are the flow sheets for this oxide material based on these other deposits? Is it a simple sort of flotation circuit, or is there acid involved because it's a free dig material, or or is it too early to tell?
Manuel, you got this one, or
yeah, you can go ahead.
Well, so from what I know, it's basically quite a simple flotation process, and there is minor sort of heavier parts to the processing, but on the whole, they're pretty convinced from what I've read in this last announcement that they're going to be able to process it like these three other existing major deposits and produce that ferro-niobium product. And at the end of the day, it's not a hard level to get it to. It's not, you're not upgrading it to a purity level in the 100 times region. It's literally just 10, 20 times.
Ferroniobium. So what are you produce ferroniobium at the end of the day? Emanuel, you might have some color on this one. What products do you get at the end of this, and how do you think about those end products in the market?
Yeah, sure. So ferroniobium, so that's basically the product that you'd use in steel production. And I think that, as I alluded to before, I think there's significant potential to grow market penetration in steel, if Luni does prove to be a commercial proposition. Why I say that is that, less than 10% of steel production uses ferroniobium at this stage. And I guess another big X factor that we haven't mentioned whatsoever as yet is that we're actually seeing niobium battery technology being commercialized at this point. And the big attraction with this is it has the potential to reduce EV charge times down to about 5 minutes, as well as increase the number of charge cycles to about 20,000. So to give you a bit of comparison, the current technology for, say, an LFP battery is at least 60 minutes to charge and about 4,000 cycles. So, a huge game changer if this sort of battery technology does prove to be commercially viable. The sort of products that this sort of battery technology would require is a pure form of niobium called niobium pentoxide. And that's, at the moment, that's a reasonably niche portion of the niobium market. But, it kind of reminds me a lot about lithium, right? It was once the ugly duckling of the minerals industry. But then once there was greater adoption on the electric vehicle side and battery side of things, we've seen what the result has been over a multi-year period. And couldn't happen with niobium. I wouldn't bet against it, let's put it that way.
Oh, Bogan, what were they looking for out there initially, mate? Were they out there hunting for niobium, or how did this all, I guess, come about?
And a prelude to that one, Matty, I heard that the BHP was interested in the area in the past, but it was hard work sort of getting an agreement with the traditional owners there. Agrimin, who had the potash thing in the area, they had this Knight of Taylor agreement in 2017, and that sort of paved the way to form these agreements. So a bunch of other players come in the area, including Tally, which had some ground. I think Rio, they did a JV with Rio, but Rio didn't take interest in this sort of tenement, and that was all Tally, and that became vended into WA1. But I don't think they were looking for niobium to start with, but it was an area of interest to majors.
Yeah. Well, Bogan, you'd be able to provide a bit of insight there.
Yeah, so and just a quick little interesting point. So Agrimin, Tally, and WA1 are all sort of joined at the hip, if you will. So I do believe there is a relationship there between Agrimin and Tally that's actually extended back quite a while, and so there is a lot of previous experience within the WA1 team in this area. It's not like they're just rocking up to the tenement for the first time and plonking a couple of holes into an old BHP target. But so originally they were actually drilling for an iron ore copper gold barometer hill lookalike, and when they initially tested. So they tested the P2 target, I originally think, and that was what their share price actually exploded on back in October of last year. They found that it was actually an enriched carbonatite, and Looney actually wasn't really much of the main story. They put 3 holes into it and came up with quite astonishing grades, but the share price wasn't really reacting. And as we've seen, there are a couple of neurology companies around, and there are a couple of groups out there in the West Arunta area looking for these carbonatite deposits. But who knows? They might find the prominent hill lookalike iron ore copper gold deposit that WA1 was originally interested in. So that's how it goes with geology. Sometimes you're looking for one thing and you poke a hole into something completely different. It's just lucky for all of us that WA1 actually were able to get this assayed and get it identified, and it designed such an aggressive RC program. And RC has a lot of benefits over, say, going at first pass in something with diamond drilling, for instance. The return times of these samples would be far quicker, and they'd have a far...
It sounds like a jab at the neurology play there.
Oh, yeah. I better stop, but I'm just saying that...
No, tell us your view on it. We'd love to hear
results back a lot quicker. They'll be able to drill the holes a lot quicker. It's not like you're relying on shipping core back to a core processing facility. Everything's processed in the field. So it's, really quite interesting as to how they've gone and drilled this out. It kind of... brings a smile to my face, thinking that there are companies out there that are that aggressive, willing to go and do this sort of spacing and prove up a monster. Because the last thing you want to be doing is going and drilling scout diamond holes and not hitting anything. So,
Bogan, in all honesty, though, what's the the geological likeliness of having more of these beyond the tenement boundary?
Well, quite frankly, aside from P2, which is their other target, which they hopefully will be testing a little bit later this year, I don't think it's all that likely. So there's 600 carbonatites that have been mapped globally, and out of those that have actually yielded significant niobium deposits, we're up to, say, 4. maybe let's just call it a dozen for now, but that's you're getting down to that sort of 1 to 2% chance of actually hitting something that's worth hitting. And then you think how many different other types of intrusives have a magnetic signature and a gravity signature and all the rest of that. And you'd be looking at maybe hitting a carbonatite 1% of the time, maybe 0.5% of the time. So this is one of those things on a scale of 1/10 of a percent, 100th of a percent. A very rare discovery. And I hope for their shareholders' sake that these other companies in the area do actually find something significant. A rising tide lifts all boats. But quite frankly, just sitting back and hoping and drilling along strike and stuff is not the right way to go for this sort of deposit type.
Very, very diplomatic of you, Bogan. Daddy, how many neurology plays have been coming across your desk around the out in the middle of buttfuck nowhere?
Hey, I just thought you called Emanuel Daddy, and I was like, wow,
Daddy.
where did that come from?
It's Daddy.
Yeah, that's all good. Yeah.
I'll put an Aussie nickname on everyone, mate. So please go.
Yeah, that's all right. I think I think there's a whole heap of neurology players out there, and I think I agree with Bogan. This deposit is something that's truly unique and rare, and I think that the probability of any of these neurology players succeeding is pretty low, in a nutshell.
Yeah. So, Emmanuel, I'm thinking about the strategic importance of this deposit. It's got scale. You've got the opportunity to have super long mine life here because you don't want to flood the market, so you're not going to go ham on production here. So long mine life, great mining jurisdiction. It's going to have corporate appeal, right? So how do you think about the potential long term when things are a bit more de-risked? Like who would have interest in a deposit like this?
Yeah, well, I think that ultimately it ticks a lot of boxes for me as a prospect for a corporate play at some stage. I think the potential to own if Luni does prove to be commercially viable in terms of scale and grade, I think that owning one of the main suppliers of niobium, given all these potential demand side drivers that I've highlighted earlier, will be remarkably attractive. I think that could you imagine if this deposit was owned by one of the big iron ore producers, Rio, BHP, FMG? They've already got a natural distribution network into an existing customer of steel mills. It's a very different proposition if CBMM, the Brazilian private company, comes to one of these, to this sort of cohort of customers versus a BHP or Rio Tinto saying that, we can supply you, for a decade long, we can supply you, in terms of the capacity supply, we can provide niobium for a multi-decade period. It's a very huge, different value proposition and driver. And it's all about ultimately the confidence of the downstream to adopt the use of these metals in various forms. Also, I think one really interesting aspect that I haven't heard discussed at any stage is that this really strongly aligns with emission reduction measures by these iron ore producers, in particular Scope 3 objectives, which are sort of or attempt to measure indirect emissions from operations and downstream products. And I think there's the potential to enormously reduce these Scope 3 emissions because just solely by pushing the use of niobium in downstream products. And ultimately, whoever owns this deposit will have just something that's very unique and not a huge competitive advantage ultimately without owning a niobium resource itself. We've already spoken about how scarce these are. So, it's going to be a really, really interesting story to follow from here on, because I think it's just such a strategically important asset in a tier 1 mining jurisdiction in WA, and I think it's so exciting, I guess, to be involved at this sort of early stage. And, don't get me wrong, this is still a discovery stage company, but I think the potential is still unknown, in the sense of where the ceiling could be ultimately. Yeah. We definitely know what the downside risk is. But
let's talk about it.
Unquantifiable, basically. I reckon
in
my mind.
we should definitely talk about, and in Bogan you mentioned there's boxes to tick for the company still, and I think in both of your minds, right? What are the things that could sort of blow up the investment thesis here? The big things that you sort of need to see ticked off before you feel like you're on the home straight a bit.
Well, first of all, I'll just say deleterious elements in the ferroniobium product that they may eventually make. That's
what would
the
they
one
be?
thing that I think we're all looking at is the uranium grades that they're actually happy enough to supply in their assay sheets, which is a super important thing for me. I think it's super important for Emanuel at this stage to know what the uranium in the deposit is.
Is that because a lot of rare earths are often too radioactive to process? Like, how does that matter in terms of the processing part?
No, you pretty much nailed it there. It's
who's a finance guy can't know stuff.
Pretty much one of those things that you don't want uranium in steel because it is a radioactive element, and it makes the whole handling of the product dangerous. It means that you can't get rid of the waste slag if it has too much uranium in it from the steel mill. But at this point, aside from metallurgy, aside from location, and aside from maybe them not being able to find enough water to actually process the material at the deposit, and its remote location, I will also say it's quite remote.
Bloody remote.
You need to build a road, wouldn't you? I just remember Agriman sort of needing to build a whole road there.
Yeah, and the Tanami Highway, I think, is pretty well known to all of us, and the issues that the government's been having trying to fund the rehabilitation / the refurbishment of that. But really, there's a lot of boxes that don't need to be ticked that I'm quite happy about already. There's no real local community around to piss off. There's no issue of native title as far as I'm concerned at this point, because all of that's already been sorted by that previous Agriman Tally relationship with the indigenous, the traditional owners, as we'd love to call them. And then you've got basically a lot of that preliminary work has already sort of been done, been cited, been flagged by the company. So it looks like they're quite serious about developing this deposit as quickly as possible, getting that maiden resource out, getting that metallurgical test work out, and doing all the environmental and heritage clearances that'll come along with it at the end of the day. So yeah, really, in terms of red flags, they're as you see them. There's nothing really hiding aside from that deleterious element one.
Is the deleterious elements, it's only uranium that could be or what are the other ones to watch out for?
Is there any that affect the processing that require a lot of acid or anything to get rid of?
At this point, it doesn't seem like there are any major red flags of those. If there was one of those rarer types of mineralogies that had no immediate processing route, then you might be in a stumbling block. If you had, say, too much of a tantalum concentration within the deposit as well, then you're looking at something that's more of a coltan style product that you'd be picking up. And so, yeah, really there's I'm sure Emanuel was probably over it too. Is there any that I've missed there, Manny?
I probably mentioned thorium as well.
Yep.
That's a pretty obvious one. And I guess, I agree entirely with you. I think that there's, a few unknowns, but I think the main one to me is just, the fact that this is still discovery stage, right? So there's going to be discovery risk. And I think that experience tells us that carbonatites are variable, right? So I'm quite interested to see the outcome of the RC or the follow-up RC assays. And I guess one question for you, Bogan, is what do you make of the zonation so far? Like, I noticed there was some pretty hefty titanium oxide hits to the northeast. What do you make of that? Is that sort of typical, would you say, or?
So I've been using, funnily enough, Mount Weld and what Linus has said about Mount Weld deposits as a good example to take along with this, because they do have a bit of variability between their deposits over there. There is one that's more phosphate titanium rich and niobium poor. And honestly, until we see more of a infilled picture with RC and diamond, honestly, there is a range of variables that can happen here. And I believe that this weathering profile will actually be quite a key. And these recent titanium hits have also shown that where titanium present, niobium isn't present. It's shown that magnetics, for instance, are showing up more white elephants than they are actual good grading areas. And so if any of the punters out there want to go back through the announcements about geophysics, I've been really heavily invested in the seismic that they've done because that's shown where the weathering profile is changing, where the intrusives do come up the surface and where there is the sort of deeper areas of oxidation. But as well, the gravity is also quite important. And I believe that at the end of the day, we will see bung holes here and there, and we might see great grades on the other side of those bung holes. So it's up to the company really to invest and take the risk outside of those zones that they might close off. But really, it's rather exciting from a geological point of view. I find that our best hole has only had 40, so hole 15 that came out has only had 45 meters of it assayed at this point, and that's to end a hole, and the grade kicks off at 78 meters. So we're really so early stage in this that being able to identify any proper zonation, even using, say, phosphorus, is just proving to be quite difficult, because I'm just seeing, essentially enriched niobium everywhere, and it's it brings a bit of a tear to your eye. Just thinking how lucky these boys are, thinking how they'd be celebrating the office at the moment.
Well, it's really rare, right? Because, you think about P2 where they've hit, very decent grades of niobium. They haven't even, from my understanding, they haven't even followed up on any of those original holes, right, that initially got the market's attention. And it's a pretty incredible discovery story playing out here, I'd say.
So what about the risk of financing, funding, offtake? If you're really going to crank up the crystal ball into the future, is there going to be an easy market for this? Like who would look to fund something like this? Because it's going to be if the scale is going to be as big as you're thinking, she's going to be a pretty big funding package.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think, in my opinion, the company as an independent entity will never get to that stage if we keep on if we keep getting the hits that they've been achieving.
That's gobbled up.
There's no way this stays.
But who gobbles up a niobium play?
Oh, as
I would suggest this belongs to a major ultimately.
Yeah.
So BHP. So you think BHP, Rio would like that's
BHP, Rio, FMG, maybe even a Luca.
Yeah. Rare earth
Linus. Yeah.
So, but on the funding package too, Matty, you've got NAIF there who provides at a low cost debt for stuff just like this. In fact, NAIF was going to be a big part of the equation for Agriman And yeah, Bogan, you mentioned the people celebrating in the office. If it is a bit of overlap with the Agriman guys, and it's a bit of reward for hard work there, and getting no ability to get that project into production anytime soon with the SOP woes in WA. So good on them in that respect.
I guess when do you think that what information would have to be out there of the size and I guess confidence before a major would gobble them up? Is it going to be sooner rather than later?
Yeah, well, they're looking to put MRE over this, or they're targeting Q4. So sort of, you'd probably think November, December. They'd put the initial MRE just for that high-grade, shallow, weathered section of the deposit. I think that trying to explore depth at this stage is probably not low-hanging fruit. And, that's why they're sort of going ham, I think, on the RC. And I think that will really sort of signal to the market that what's out there. I mean, ultimately, the shallow parts of the deposit is going to be the first to be commercialized if this gets off the ground. And I think the payback, even like, let's just say hypothetically, even if it was in the hands of a major or even a mid-tier, the payback on this thing is going to be incredible, even if the capex up front may be heavy. It's definitely it looks like it's going to be a long life strategic asset, and these sort of assets don't come around very often, are rarely available. So
is any big dogs on the register yet? Don't know.
Yeah, not really sure, to be honest. I think it's still pretty early stage. As we've discussed, it's still early days, but I think the potential is definitely there.
So I read on the note this morning, Maddie, from Paradigm Funds, that they're sort of saying 40 years mine life at a 50% EBITDA margin, producing $250 million EBITDA a year. So if that's the potential, and these are really, really back the envelope numbers, right? So hold them with an absolute grain of salt. But if that's your back of the envelope calc, it doesn't take too long to pay back the capex there.
And one thing I should mention, Maddie, is that Rio Tinto are already in JV with Tali, who are WA1's major shareholder on ground to the south. So Rio would have their own team in the area, be pretty familiar, no doubt would be watching closely at their neighbours to the north. So it provides a bit of validation to the theme,
Yeah, well, best of luck to people that bought in at high $6 before it come down, I guess. So,
yeah, I
guess what's coming up? What can we expect? So you said the mineral resource estimate end of the year, Q4. Peppering it full of drill holes until then. And that mineral resource, do you see, is the big catalyst for, when the offers are going to start coming in? Do you think they'll progress it to a PFS? Within WA1?
Why would you go to a PFS when you're, drilling into rock that's worth, a couple of $1,000s a ton?
Keep drilling.
You can go straight to a DFS.
Yeah, but do you think WA1 would do it? Do you think they'd need a DFS or something in place before they get gobbled up by a major?
Keep in mind, a major wants to de-risk things a hell of a lot before they, acquire. It's all relative to valuation too, but, you don't really very often see a major acquire something without those MET boxes being ticked off and, environmental pathway being clear.
Yeah, exactly. So I agree. I think that MET is going to be key here. Jurisdiction, we know it's, the middle of nowhere. So picking off those various issues, just ensuring, good relations with the locals and, just having that initial resource and picking off all the various, environmental studies and de-risking the project ultimately. That's what it comes down to, yeah.
What do you reckon, Bogan? I guess they're the big ticket items you'll be looking to see as an investor with since you put all your family into it now as well.
More banger draws, mate. More banger draws. A couple of bangers into P2 and guys got to remember we got the word. They've got 52 holes drilled so far into this thing. One of those is diamond. So we've got the diamond rig on site, getting those. So I think they've done a twin hole for the first hole, and that's already been completed. And then the rest will likely be that single diamond hole per line to get the QA/QC up to standard for the maiden resource. And then, like seeing where this goes, seeing how laterally extensive this deposit is, and then seeing if P2 does have that similar sort of scale and size. But I, at this point, I don't really care too much about P2 because I know that Looney's got this Goldilocks zone going on. And really, at the end of the day, it's once metallurgy comes in, that'll be one of those things that'll confirm it in the big guys' eyes. But for us little guys out here, I think we really want to see greater meters at shallow depths. And you guys, I really think we can't go past the fact that the best hole we've drilled so far has only been assayed for 45 meters. It's we have something here that's going to be very, very interesting to watch play out. And this grade is the furthest step out they've gone so far. So we'll be waiting for the next couple of weeks until this next assay announcement comes out. I'll be hoping that my theory that the oxidation profile where it dips down will continue holding these really nice niobium grades. And I just think for people, don't get too bummed if you do see these the oxidation profile come to surface. These things do happen. These are rocks. There's no straight lines in geology. There's no lovely square shapes. It's all a big product of history and weathering and all the things that be in our great world. So, I look forward to seeing how this one plays out.
Have you got any, peer-to-peer comparisons historically of, the way this little exploration story is coming together and the potential it could go to if all these gaps get filled in? Look at Linetown, that's $5 billion now. So after the takeover, but what can you compare it to anything in the past?
I wouldn't even compare it to Linetown. Quite frankly, I don't have the best opinion of Linetown, nor Chalice, for instance. Quite frankly, I think this is in a world of its own, and maybe Cadia. But even Cadia was a question that was unveiled over a couple of years. This is going to take a couple of months. Really, I don't think we have a peer-to-peer example that would really match this in terms of the way it's come about, and
also the market dynamics of the commodity too, right?
That's it. Yeah. That's it. I love using metal equivalents, but it's such a crime in this case. It's such a crime because it's something that's basically.
Actually, that's a risk I want to talk about, right? Could the Brazilians flood the market here, and just to try to wipe out a competitor?
Manny, I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, I think not. And, for one thing, we don't really know, what the overall resource grade will be here. And ultimately, we've got parts of the deposit where it looks like the grade is way above, the grade of the Brazilian deposit. So Araxa, as I mentioned, it's the only niobium deposit with only 2% head grade globally. I think overall their resource is about 2.5% niobium. The other Brazilian resource is, I think, about 0.6 or 0.7%, so sub 1%. So I think it's not really feasible, to that story about flooding the market, notwithstanding, permitting issues and other corporate issues. So I don't believe that story or that the Brazilians are capable of doing. In the sense of flooding the market.
Well, we welcome a contrarian to come on and balance out the views of the experts here today. Where equally, if anyone's a bloody perma bear on this one, and your arguments are based in thoughtful sort of evidence, and we welcome you onto the show as well.
And we know we'll keep them away from Bogan. Old Bogan sounds like he could throw a good haymaker, and bloody if anyone's dishing his WA1, so we'll keep his arm lengths. Yeah,
and we hope it works out for you too, Bogan, because I want you to keep putting food on the table. It sounds like you're all in. So.
Yeah, that's it, mate. That's it. I've been trying to keep Mr. Datt over there from posting too many Ferrari gifts, but quite frankly, as far as I see it, this will buy me a nice brand new Land Cruiser very soon.
Beautiful.
Anyone, you don't have to give away your location, Bogan, but I just probably want to put a word out to anyone that knows Bogan. If you catch an Uber in his town, just beware of it's not financial advice when it comes from the Uber driver. If he starts talking WA1.
It's usually
it's a guy at the pub.
No, good stuff, lads. Mate, we'll probably be great to have you on again in the future, and we're very keen to track this journey. And Trav and I, or mostly myself, are definitely much more the wiser on Niobium after today. I've definitely got to re-listen to the whole thing, but it's we really appreciate you coming on and getting in touch.
Good
old Twitter.
It's been bloody awesome. We welcome either of you and both of you back on the show anytime.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for the opportunity, guys. It's been really enjoyable to talk about an opportunity that I'm really excited about. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, blokes. Thanks. I don't think I fucking swore once, but
JD's been away. So JD, for all the money miners out there, JD is alive to our knowledge. He's doing something in Africa, hopefully something legal. And but I've been sneaking a few F-bombs in this week, and Trav hasn't kicked me off yet. So I'm just going to make it a regular thing. It's fucking great.
It's fucked Australia.
We won't be getting any YouTube revenue off this episode. That's $3 we won't get. Right, good on you, boys. Best of luck. Hope it all works out for your investments and all the other punters in there. And we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, see you at the pub sometime, mate.
Yeah, bloody oath. Go the Blues.
All right, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Right, we were just going to cut it there, but we can't because there was no hootaroo in there, was it, Trav?
100%, mate.
And the legacy of JD lives on. As people have asked, concerned about his whereabouts, to our knowledge, he is alive. And we're looking forward to having him back next week, Big JD.
Absolutely, mate. I can't wait. How good were those guys, by the way?
Oh, bloody brilliant, eh? Jeez, doesn't it make you realise that, first pass analysis of announcements and stuff in comparison to, your geologists and people like Datty and Bogan, the depth and understanding they go into for these announcements to really provide a good investment thesis. So.
I quite like, and follow both of them on Twitter, but I love Bogan's sort of, message and rhetoric that he puts out there. He sort of has this thesis, every company has a red flag, and I think, most geos are bloody promoters, but Bogan, he promoted WA1 to the tits today, but, you look at his content on Twitter and it's sort of pointing out those red flags a lot of the time. So he comes at it with a cynical lens, and I appreciate that perspective because, you don't get that one very often.
Yeah, very much so, mate. Righto, money miners, ladies and gentlemen. Hootaroo for another day, and look forward tomorrow. We've got a pretty good episode coming up. I'm excited. Hootaroo.
The information contained in this episode of Money of Mine is of general nature only and does not take into account the objectives, financial situation or needs of any particular person. Before making any investment decision, you should consult with your financial advisor and consider how appropriate the advice is to your objectives, financial situation and needs.